Bueno, ahora para seguir celebrando la innovación y el emprendimiento, tenemos un invitado de lujo. Alguien que ha estado por muchos años en la cuna del emprendimiento y la innovación en Silicon Valley, el señor Tom Byers, un buen amigo y colega, con el cual, como algunos saben de ustedes, tenemos a través del instituto que él fundó en Stanford, una colaboración estratégica entre esta universidad y el Stanford Technology Ventures Program. Así que now I'm going to switch to English because the talk is going to be in his native language, and I'm going to introduce Professor Tom Byers. He's a professor at Stanford University School of Engineering, where he focuses on innovation and entrepreneurship education. He has been a faculty co-director since the inception of the Stanford Technology Ventures Program, aka STVP. He's one of the founders of this key innovation accelerator in Stanford and Silicon Valley. He's the co-principal investigator for the National Science Foundation Epicenter at Stanford, where they are fostering innovation and entrepreneurship in engineering education across the United States. Tom is co-author of a macro-hill entrepreneurship bestseller and textbook called Technology Ventures, From Idea to Enterprise, which is a key book for our curricula in innovation and entrepreneurship at Catholic University. He is also an affiliated faculty member of the Woods Institute for the Environment and Precourt Institute for Energy at Stanford University. Tom has been a visiting professor at United Arab Emirates Higher College of Technology, where I was even teaching a class with him back in February, at the London Business School and at the University College of London. Tom has received the Stanford Gords Award for teaching, the university's highest award, and its Tau Beta Phi Award for undergraduate teaching in the engineering school. The National Academy of Engineering awarded him the 2009 Gordon Prize, which is the profession's highest honor recognizing innovation in engineering and technology education. Tom holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering and operation research and an MBA from UC Berkeley, and he earned his PhD in business administration also from UC Berkeley. So it's an honor and a pleasure to introduce our very good friend and colleague.
So sorry, I'm going to speak in English. My Spanish is not so good, but it was good enough to really enjoy and understand a good bit of what was happening here the last hour. So you are the teams that made it happen, correct? But I am here to honor you and to congratulate you on getting to this stage. And I know you're waiting to hear the results from the judges. Me too, me too. I look forward to that. I thought what I would try to do is tell you a little bit about what lies ahead for you. That was a very kind, way too long introduction. He should have been on the clock. I was lucky to be a student at Berkeley and help a company called Symantec get started a long time ago, doing something very similar to what you did tonight. And then about 20 years ago, I decided to be an educator for the rest of my life, and that's what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. And I was lucky to end up at Stanford University and started something called Stanford Technology Ventures Program, which is really friendly with Catholica. And that's what brings me here and this incredible opportunity to talk to you for a little bit. I guess I'm the entertainment between your presentation and the results of the judging. So I'm going to do my best to entertain you. So I thought a lot about that. I said, well, how do I entertain it? Because one thing I did not make it up here is I used to have really long hair and I played electric guitar in a rock band. So this reminds me much more of some of the gigs that we had when I was your age. But I'll try to entertain you in a different sort of way. He did mention I have been lucky to be author of a textbook. And when you are trying to write a textbook, whether it's the old physical textbooks or now they're all online, you look at a subject and you read everything you possibly can. Books and blogs and other trade books, and you try to distill it down into just some basic principles in order to put in a certain number of pages. I'm also responsible for organizing the curriculum at Stanford for technology entrepreneurship. Now, when I say technology entrepreneurship, I really mean just high growth entrepreneurship. Every single one of the presentations I heard has the potential for high growth, and that's what I mean when I say tech. So I'm responsible for building out a curriculum. I do a little bit of the teaching. Some of the people that you're going to see help me, so I brought them along. I couldn't fly them all here, but I brought them with video. So there's going to be a combination of me and some of the professors that help us, or guest speakers that help us deliver that curriculum to exactly the kind of dreamers that you are. So let's get going. So first of all, it's organized, I have 7 things I want to mention, to talk about. And they're organized in a way that fits this model of entrepreneurship. So here's a good way to look at it. Some of you are more comfortable with entrepreneurship in the top half there. You really enjoy evaluating opportunities, looking for when markets and products collide and create opportunity. And that's what you like to do. That was easy for you during this whole process. Others of you, like I was at Symantec, I enjoyed figuring out the operations, how we were going to get financed, how we were going to or fill out the team, and then grow from there. Both types are entrepreneurial, and you can call yourself an entrepreneur. So we're going to look at 7 things that kind of go around this model. So let's get started. Here they are. There's a lot of words here, and I'm going to step through each one really carefully and quickly, and we'll see if it strikes a chord with you, now that I'm in the music mode, it strikes a chord with you about what is going to come, not only what's happened so far with you during this competition, but as a professor and as a teacher, that's my passion. I really want to encourage you to just keep learning, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways to do that. So let's start with the top 2. Probably what they're talking about back there is, was this an idea that we saw, or was it an opportunity? And maybe your journey this year has been all about this. So I want to add a couple of things to that. I know you had lots of workshops, and I understand you learned some methodologies from some friends of mine. So we'll get to that, but let's just step back for a second. Really what the real issue is your idea a true opportunity? And I'm going to challenge you. The world has some amazing crises that are about to unfold. So think about your venture, and I'm specifically talking to the teams here, and I love everybody else who's here to support you like I am, but I really want to have a conversation or connect with those of you who are members of the teams that we're presenting. Where do you fit in the big issues of the world, which are pulling, those are market pulls? If you can frame it that way, you will certainly get people's attention. Are you involved in environmental and sustainability issues? Are you involved in healthcare issues? Are you involved in digital and physical infrastructure? I certainly saw some of those. And that includes information technologies, which was my background. Or are you involved in human health and education, which is what I do now? Or maybe you were some combination of the two. It's really good to be in something that is part of a mega trend, and you are capable of communicating why you're part of that. And we'll talk about that some more. On the flip side, and this is for those of you who had a technology involved in your solution, entrepreneurship has been going on for centuries. Centuries. I work at a university that's become famous the last few decades because of the success of Silicon Valley. I realize that, and I'm humbled that I get a chance to go there and work every day. It was actually started by somebody who was involved, and I'm not sure you can read that, but that was a wave back in the 1700s called railroads. And it was the internet at the time. And Stanford was one of the people, he was like a Bill Gates or Michael Zuckerberg Michael Zuckerberg, I just changed his name. Jet lag, or just call him Zuckerberg. And he was part of that wave with railroads. He did and wrote it. So I was lucky when I was your age to catch a software wave with desktop computers. Well, here you come, and there's some wave going on. This is from the textbook, and there's some, potential technology waves or other kinds of similar scientific waves. But which wave are you riding? Which one can you have the wind in your back? It's a lot easier to do a company or an enterprise, if you're doing a social enterprise, when there's wind in your back. Whether there's a big pull or whether there's wind in your back with your technology or your science. So how do you explain this? I bring it together in a story. You told a very good story here, but let's hear from my favorite entrepreneur right now in Silicon Valley. And some people say he might be the next Steve Jobs. So if we got this right, should we give it a try? I'm sure you heard of Twitter. This is the Twitter guy.
The biggest thing for me on that path is I need to draw something out, and I need to get it out of my head. I found myself very early on thinking about something, like thinking about this early idea for Twitter, and saying to myself, I could build this awesome. You have those like shower moments where you're walking at midnight in some town in New York City, and you've got these amazing brain ideas, and then you start thinking, well, I could really start doing this if only X, and if I had this person, or if this technology existed, or if this happened or this happened. And what I realized I was doing is I constantly making excuses for not working on it. And then the window had passed, and then I couldn't do anything. So I think it's really, really important to write it out, or to draw it out, or to code it. But you need to get it out of your head. And the reason you have to get it out of your head is you need to be able to see it on a surface that is not in your mind. And once you can see it, and once you can step back from it, then you can also decide, this passes my filter, passes my, constraints, so maybe I can show it and share it with some other people. And then they'll be like, that's the stupidest idea ever, or that's somewhat interesting, but maybe this and this and this. So the sooner you can do that, then you have a lot of momentum around it, and you can, really decide if you want to commit to it and work on it more, or put it on the shelf for a later date. And the realization that I think everyone needs to have about that latter option, putting it on the shelf, is that you can come back to it, and it'll surface back up in another piece of work or another idea at some point in your life. So, having that ability to close off a chapter and move on is really, really important. You can't have all these open threads, and that's what I realized I was doing, and that also encouraged me to really write more, and to really think about, what is the story? How are people coming to this? And like when I show my friends this, how are they going to react? And I would write it down. I would actually treat it like a play. And when I realized that I was writing plays, I read a lot more plays for style and for substance and for technique, and I think it's really good. And I think there's another company that I've always looked towards for inspiration, and I know a number of people in this room probably have this similar company in mind, which is Apple. Apple, I think, is run like a theater company. It has a great sense of pacing, has a great sense of story, and has a great sense of execution, and it's all event-driven, it's all stage-driven. The stage being a billboard, or the stage being a keynote, or the stage being a product launch. All of it has a very, very cohesive end-to-end story. I mean, you think about what happened when Steve Jobs came back to the company. The first thing he did is he killed every product line the company was working on. And for two years, they had no product on the market whatsoever. All they had were a bunch of posters all around the world with Steve's heroes. And it said, think different. And it was just focused on bringing up the brand and making people aware of the brand again and how the brand is aligning to this particular feeling and story. And then they came out with the iMac and then built iTunes and then the iPod, and they realized that, wait a minute, people are carrying music on their phones now, so we better build a phone, an iPhone. And so this unfolding of the plot and the epic story has been very, very interesting to watch, especially if you look back to that time when he came back to the company. So I've learned a lot from that company and other companies who operate in a similar fashion.
So the epic story, that's question number one. It's not so much saying, okay, I got a big market and my product is a great solution and we got a great team. Those are all sort of checklist items, but it's developing an epic story. Number two, having to do especially with opportunity recognition and evaluation. That would be, what is your competitive positioning? And how are you developing partners and customers? Well, looking at the methodology that you were encouraged to use, I know you've heard of this person, Steve Blank. And I see part of the journey for you until I got here, and I was really, really glad to see it, because that is what we're emphasizing as well amongst these other things I'm going to talk to you about at our school. So I'll just leave that as is. But I'm going to encourage you to look back a little bit now. There's another methodology in marketing, what people would call marketing, but really it's just it's really strategy to me. And it's a book called Crossing the Chasm, because the canvas work and the customer development work, that was the methodology that you were encouraged to use, is really good for when you're just beginning. But if you it turns out customers have different personalities, and they adopt technologies or products or catch the spirit in different time periods. So there's these things called early adopters. So Steve's Blank's methodology and the canvas is really, really good for this early period, and it was a great tool for you to use. Eventually though, especially with certain types of companies and technologies, there's a need to think, okay, we're going to have to change all this style that we've been up to so far, and we're going to have to focus on specific customers. This fellow wrote a book about 20 years ago. It still has great relevance. It's called Crossing the Chasm, as you can see, and it says, how do you make it across to really where the the bulk of customers are in any given, set of people you're trying to satisfy or delight. And the single most important thing to get there, to get across that chasm, because I can tell you stories about after Symantec, I was in a company that we did not make it across the chasm, and it was in the early days of tablet computers. And even though I started that company with the fellow who invented the spreadsheet, the first spreadsheet ever, he was this brilliant technologist, we did not make it across the chasm because we actually did not do a few things, but one of them is we never really could agree on a good elevator pitch. And you were up here, you were up here doing essentially elevator pitches, in 5 minutes. And the ones that I could understand, I was catching, did a very good job of this. And this means that you're already well on your way to figuring out ways to get across the chasm if you are so lucky to be, still going in a while. And that is very simple. And it's a two-sentence way of saying strategy, so it makes for a very short elevator ride. Number one is, why should anybody care at all what you're talking about? So that sort of ties in with the epic story part, because I certainly get enthusiastic when I see somebody talking about something that really has a world impact. So that's sort of the why care, and this is a template just to fill it out. For who, what is their pain, or how am I going to delight them? And so that's sort of the x-axis. Every professors love graphs, so think about x-axis. The y-axis is how are you differentiated? And for MBAs, they use fancy words like competitive positioning. So let's just let that be. All that means is, why are you going to kick ass? Why is it that you are just so much better than everything else out there? And that is the y-axis. So of course, you want to be way out on the x-axis, the first sentence, why should anybody care at all? The value proposition, in other words. And way up on the y-axis, why is it that you are going to be, as a friend of mine says, the single white tulip in a field of crappy tulips? Why? And if you continually ask yourself on this, and yes, keep refining and experimenting, this is going to be a good way to cross the chasm. So in the United States, I don't know if you've heard about this car, the Tesla. This is like a sample. Have you heard about Tesla, the electric car? It's kind of a hot car, like a Ferrari. So everybody loves cars, so I just grabbed this out of the textbook to share. So it shows that why would anybody care at all, and why Tesla is saying, look, we're going to be different than Ferraris and Porsches. It's up to you to decide whether that's working. Nice and windy out there. So I will move on to number 3. Now we're going to switch, and I'm going to use this term, lean startup. Have you heard of lean startup? Have you heard of Obama? It's about as popular right now. It has really been a wonderful way of explaining some theories that have been around for a long, long time, but saying them in a way that happens to catch fire, that people really do relate to. And I'm glad that that's happened for you. But let's just stop for a second and say, really, what are we talking about when we say lean startup? I hope it translates okay. But entrepreneurs for a while, really good ones, have always talked about being, when they were asked how are things going at their startup, they'll say, oh, well, they're fine, but we're working on the white hot risk. And that's like having a poker that is white hot from getting so red. If you're having a fireplace and you're pokering, what is the risk right now that is so intense that we need to put our energies on it? Frankly, at the expense of laying back on some other stuff. So it becomes like a ring of fire, because that's what, if you're really going to do this, get ready. It is a ring of fire. It is really chaotic. And so there has to be some way to stay calm. And one way to do that is to always be able to say, right now, our biggest issue that we need to do experimentation on, so forth, keep our canvas turning over, it has to do with either product or technology, whatever, market, team, or finance. I mean, really, it's just sort of the 4 ones. For example, you may be missing a key member of the team. If you're really intellectually honest, not just trying to impress some judges, but if you really look yourself in the mirror with your teammates and say, wow, what is really bugging us right now? Well, it's, we're missing a key part of the team. That would be the white hot risk, and that is where the cash is being spent. Not on fancy parties, not on cappuccino machines, not on other parts of the company, but really on addressing that risk. And the entrepreneurs who communicate that way hold a lot of credibility. While we're in sort of the money thing, let's just continue on that. And this notion of pursuit of opportunity and capital. So, at any given time, and I bet you know this answer, but please never stop knowing this answer, even when you're successful. How much cash do you have? I work at an institution that has a lot of cash. I have no idea how much cash Stanford University has right now. And I bet my friends who teach here at Cattolica, if I asked them, how much cash is on the balance sheet of this university? They'd say, I don't know, I'm going to get paid next week. But you should know that. And every time in the boards that I'm on of companies, that is really fundamental that everybody in the leadership says, oh, I can tell you right down to the peso how much cash we have, because that is the blood pressure of the enterprise, of this beautiful person that we're trying to turn into a living, breathing person. So cash is really important. So where does it come from? Let's do that first, and then talk about how to deal with it. So the first one is, this is a really busy slide. That's the first thing. And it's from classes of ours on raising cash, which, you know, in a way you're doing that tonight. Because it's one side of the graph, it's all the different sources of capital available. And I have two comments. One is, there you are, for the most part, because of the stage of your company, sort of down to the left. FFF does not stand, that's not the F word. It's not Ferrari either, or fashion. It's friends and families and fools. And I've been foolish many times in my own investing. But it's sort of like, those are folks that are even crazier than angels that would go for something as wonderfully complex but exciting as what you're trying to do. But eventually there are other kinds of sources of capital. Well, one of them is more or less the government, because I think that's what's sort of involved, you know, where a good bit of this money's come from, as well as industry, to provide these seed grants to you. But eventually, it's really important to understand the pros and cons of every single one of the other ones. Regular institutional venture capital, or strategic partners, like if you're in IT, that would be folks like Google and Cisco, or if you're in healthcare, it'd be like the pharmaceutical companies. They do investing. And then eventually banks, and even maybe a public offering or secondary market offering, it's really important to understand the advantages and disadvantages of each one, and that can be learned. It's not rocket science, but it really is an important thing for somebody on your team to start becoming familiar with. Just as much as somebody on the team understanding a market and the technology or the product. So here's a slide from another slide from our good buddy, Steve Blank. And he says, you know, business plans are passé. I know this competition adopted that philosophy and said, let's do a model, you know, because the business plans are just way too static and models are very dynamic. Fantastic. I'm glad that that was the basis of the competition this year with you. And it does orient you back to just, well, you know what, at the end of the day, although we can be part of the big trend in the world and have an epic story, we have to figure out a way someday to make money on our own, not just from investors. So it didn't come across well, but I realized that as part of that, you developed and used many campuses by Osterwalder. So we really like him. We've had him come to campus many times. We have a lot of video of him. Maybe you watch some of that on our site, the eCorner site. But I want to play a video of another fellow and introduce you to another book. The Osterwalder book and the canvas is cool. There's another cool thing, especially now that you might start getting operational. And that's one of the things I love about teaching entrepreneurship, is say, okay, you know, the party is over, the glamour is over. Now we've really got to get our hands dirty and operating a company and starting to grow it. So there's this book called Getting to Plan B, and I'd like to introduce you to it from a friend of mine who teaches with us. He's a partner at Kleiner Perkins. Can we try this one, Steve?
I want to recognize the fact that your new book that just came out with John Mullins, Getting to Plan B. Yeah. Now, the interesting thing about that book is that the assumption is that all business plans are really plan A, and it's very unlikely that they're going to succeed. So are all business plans a work of fiction?
You know, it's interesting. I want to take one step back on John Mullins, because John Mullins was brought to me by Tom Byers. John Mullins was here from London School of Business in about 2006 or 7, and he was working on a thesis around business models. And he came to me with this idea that there was a way to sort of methodically map business models for startups, and I doubted that, and so we ended up in a debate, and the debate became this Plan B phenomenon, which fundamentally was around the notion of, could you actually build a business plan before there was a product? Could you build a business plan before there was a customer? And in my experience, that didn't work very well. And so we went out and did the research. And the research suggested that, in fact, the vast majority of Plan A's fail. And the vast majority of the successes that we think about out there, the Googles of the world, the Facebooks of the world, the Intuits, the Suns, the Apples of the world, they didn't succeed with Plan A. And that's sort of a little known fact. Most people sort of sweep that under the carpet and sort of talk about these companies as if they had executed well from the idea to conception, from conception to product, from product to customer, from customer to business. That's not the way it normally goes. And so the premise behind Plan B, Getting to Plan B, the new book that I just wrote with John Mullins, is that if Plan A is most often fail, which they empirically do, then should we have a different methodology for how we in fact run startups and get to the right plan B?
So a couple messages there. One is, the reason I wanted to show that is I really do like this book, and it goes through a dashboard. It literally provides a suggested set of metrics for you to track to see if your hypotheses are going to make it. Maybe you've developed your own dashboard, and this will just give you, as part of this competition, but this will give you another way maybe to make that better. All right? So I encourage you to look at that. And you know, but the meta level is, look, they're going to come out, you're going to get the word of whether you were selected in some fashion for the awards here. And congrats to the folks who do. But you know what? Congrats to the people who don't, because that might just be a signal that it's time for Plan B. And that you might end up being the one that we all talk about 5 years from now. Just because this moment happened, gave you a good kick in the back, and you went back and you retooled the company. This happened to us at Symantec. Symantec is a funny word. It means semantics. It means English, you know, or natural language. Actually, not English. It's asking questions. You know, it's a linguistic term. But we had a product that you could ask personal computers their databases in the English language, and it was way early on, and that was kind of cool technology to demonstrate here. But it was never going to make us a big company. That was our Plan A. Plan B was getting in the antivirus business, and as soon as we had in the antivirus business, Symantec became a big company, and we all looked brilliant. We were very lucky that we, frankly, got our backs kicked about that artificial intelligence technology and made us look somewhere else, which was right underneath our nose when we got into the antivirus and security software business. So, getting to Plan B, I encourage you to take a look. Let's see if I can go ahead. All right, there we go. All right, so those are 4 out of 7. We only got 3 more to go. Should I keep going? Because I can stop and we can just drink beer until they came back. Or you would be so kind to let me keep going and talk about the 3 that are most important. And that is, let's start this now and then we'll do it at the end. Look at your teammates. Look them in the eye and say, gracias. I mean, you got here because you were a team. So I want to talk about people stuff now for just 3, because I know you've probably heard this from other speakers, but it really is true. I come from Silicon Valley in peace to tell you that it really does come down to the people. All this other stuff is just BS. It's really down to these next 3. What steps, let's go ahead. Oh, help me out and say, oh, yep. What steps are you taking to turn those people, I should make you touch each other and hold hands. What steps are you taking to be a team and not just a group? And you know this from sports, right? You know that Spain won the last World Cup because they were a team. I happened to be in Barcelona that night doing this when that was happening. And it was pretty chaotic when the game let out. And Spain won the World Cup because why? They played like a team. So you ever see this picture on the internet? You know who it is? It's from my generation. It's from when we were starting. There was this other company called Microsoft starting. So which one is Bill Gates? The bottom left, yeah. The rest of them are terrorists that could not get in the United States. No, I'm just kidding. This is the Microsoft team. So they were a team. It wasn't just Bill Gates or the fellow on the right who his name is Paul Allen. No. Take it from me. Bill had a whole team around him. In fact, one of them ended up being my co-founder for this company that didn't make it after Symantec. So what are you doing to turn your group into a team? There's specific techniques to do that. And so that means somebody has to take that on and say, you know, we're going to try and do that. Let me play another clip from a young woman your age who started a biotechnology company without a PhD. So let's try this one. Elizabeth.
I went through the process in leaving Stanford of raising money and building a team. Building a team being the most fundamental piece of what we do. This company is only as good as its people, and we've been fortunate to identify really good technology leadership from a number of different disciplines. One of the things that's unique and was challenging about building our organization is that there's so many different technologies that we integrate into this home lab, if you will, that we had to pull chemists and software engineers and biomathematicians and get them to all work together in a constructive way, which is not as simple as you might think. We also had to pick people who were the kind of investors who could really share our long-term vision. I was fortunate to find those people, and in my mind, the most important thing in starting a new company is to be able to find people who can stand by you to achieve the ultimate goal with building the business. There's a lot of companies that are set up to be acquired or to fill a short-term need in the market. Our company is set up to define a new industry. And if there's anything in terms of the messages that I could bring to this meeting, it's the people that you choose to work with absolutely determine the success or failure of the companies that you may start.
So there was a 25-year-old woman who's a very successful CEO now. The company has 1,000 people. That was her talking about her experience starting it from scratch. If she can do it, you can do it. And as a matter of fact, I have a little equation for you. After all, I'm an engineering professor. I have a little equation to keep in the back of your mind as you pursue this gathering of a team. It adds one more little concept. It says, look, at the end of the day, it's not just being a team just to say, cool, we're a team. It's about innovation. I mean, that's what you're after, is being a really, really cool innovator. So that means having a great team, but also means making sure some of the people on that team are super creative. And you tolerate them, and you make sure they fit in. So if you have both creativity and teamwork, then you're surely going to have a really innovative startup. And you'll continue to be innovative, no matter whether it's on the technology or product side or on the business model side. Let's move on to number 6, which is now it's very personal. We were talking about the team. Now let's talk about you. This is where you get to hold a mirror up. Are you self-aware? I ask you that. Are you self-aware about what you're good at and what you're not so good at? So, do you have the guts to ask your teammate tonight, maybe after a few beers and wine, or maybe tomorrow, to say, you know, what could I be better at? Really, what could I do? Where am I helping the organization? That's all good to hear, and thank you very much. But where could I improve? Because I can actually handle what you're about to tell me. So that's pretty important to try to do that exercise, and I urge you guys to try it. This is not reaching. There we go. Because I think we encourage, and I encourage you, and maybe you've seen this model before, to become a T-shaped person. Be really, really good at some discipline. I mean, there's just something that some part of life, or in this case, since you have dreams of being in the enterprise, some piece of it that you're really, really good at, but by continuing to learn about entrepreneurship in general and innovation and leadership, you are spreading yourself out. So what do I mean specifically about some skills that you could consider improving? Here they are. At the basic level, it's just understanding business. There's really no excuse, especially given what you can learn on the internet now or from your advisors. to understand enough about business to be dangerous, to understand about finance and accounting and so forth, good, and organization stuff. But then the other colors here, the ones in green are the interpersonal skills. The ability to do what I'm doing right now, to be able to communicate. And so many of you were very, very impressive up here, one after another, to get up and do and communicate your epic story to us. But it also means things like persuasion and influence, or making sure to remind everybody we're going to do this, and this whole enterprise is going to be based on ethics and integrity. You know, we're never going to let our reputation get ruined by breaking the rules. Maybe bend them, but we're not going to break them. So those are interpersonal skills that you might need some work on. The ones at the top in red are strategic thinking skills. Those are really what, you know, hopefully if you were an engineer type when you were in college, I hope you took some humanities classes. Or if you were humanities majors, I hope you took some engineering classes for sure. But I'm particularly talking to the engineering majors, of which I was one. You know, humanities did us a great service. It taught us a good bit about how to think. And in the case of, let's pick one, decision making. How to make decisions without having all the information. That's really hard for techies, or people that are into technology. They would rather have complete information than make a decision. Whatever, you know, decision about the business model, decision about the organization, decision about the product. Learning how to sharpen that skill to be able to make a decision, especially in a way that it could be staged, that it could, you know, if things, the hypotheses aren't working out, there could be, you know, change to recover. That's a very good skill to learn. So I encourage you all to do a little bit of self-awareness. Ask your teammates. This is my list that I try to teach in my courses. I could ask all the other 20 faculty on our team what their list would be, but it would be something similar like this. All right, so let's get to number 7, and then hopefully they'll be on their way back with the results. Number 7, do I get a cheer? Oh, I'm sorry, I got 12 more. They told me to do that. They said stretch, stretch. No, this is it. And hopefully we'll end with a bang. So here you are, at this moment, like I said earlier. It's been obviously very intense building up to this moment. There's a lot of adrenaline going, especially for those of you who got up here. My adrenaline's going crazy right now. I'm just asking you to just breathe for a minute and think really long term. Really think out 5 years or 10 years. I promise you, I'm not asking one of those stupid questions big companies ask you. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? I just want you to dream about what it might be like 5 years from now or 10 years from now, and this particular passion that you've been working on, this venture. What could it be? What would be success for you? Would it be a scalable, which is the buzzword now, would it be like something that grew to be very, very big? I'm really proud of Symantec, but I'm also proud of the company that didn't make it. I got my things I'm proud of it, now that I've been around the block a little bit. But for you, what are you going to be most proud of and want to be admired for 5 or 10 years from now? Well, it's not too early to start thinking about how you're going to get there and how you're going to carry yourself. So the person, but first of all, I don't think it's going to be because you thought you were going to make a lot of money. In fact, I will guarantee you that it won't be anything to do with money. You might make a lot of money, you might not make a lot of money, but that won't be the issue. It'll be around things like, were you able to scale a vision? So the person that I've brought along with me to do this is another clip from our collection. And by the way, if you like any of these clips, just go and watch them. She is Mark Zuckerberg's, and that's Mark, not Michael. Mark Zuckerberg's partner at Facebook, and has been for the last 3 years. So let's hear from Cheryl.
So there's a lot of talk about how to run organizations. And people who are smart about this separate out management and leadership. And they talk about management as things like the science of administering a business. And it has this very best practices kind of theme to it. And I hate those terms. I can hate them because I was a consultant. So I always make fun of consultants and business school students because I was. But it has that very consulting. But it really is the kind of 1 + 1 = 2. If I do this, the company does this. If I do this, the company does that. It's a science. And then there's this leadership thing. And this leadership thing always has this kind of more art or more magical idea towards it. And what it is, I think, it's the art of administering a business so that people, the art of accomplishing more than the science of management teaches you is possible. With management and with authority and with, structures all businesses and organizations have, you can get people to do things. You work for me, I ask you to do A, you're likely to do A. But while you can get compliance, you can't get passion. You can't get true excitement. That's what leadership is. Leadership is helping people or finding a way to convince a group of people that are working together on something, or in some cases aren't working very well together, to follow what the mission is, what you want, to follow whatever it is with true enthusiasm. And it is that enthusiasm which transcends science, which makes it seem like 1 + 1 = 3, not 2. So people talk a lot about, well, how do you get there? How do you be a great leader? And I think it's a lot of things, and I don't pretend to have the answer. But it's a bunch of things about who you are as a person. People follow people they respect and trust. If you don't have respect and trust, you don't have any hope of being a great leader. Some of the stuff are skills you can learn. People look at people who are great speakers, who are really convincing orators, and they say, wow, I want to follow that person. People who can tell great stories, great narratives. But when you take all the personal stuff aside, there's something else that's really important to great leadership, which is the purpose of the leadership. And that's what I mean by scaling a vision. That you can lead all day long, but if you're leading people to, make soap, that's important. But does it have that, I want to follow this, I want to, serve this mission till the ends of my life, I want to stay up all night and work all day to serve that mission. It's having a great vision that I think becomes the basis of real leadership. And that vision has to be one that scales, that can take you from where you are to the more than foreseeable future.
So I live and work down the street from Facebook, and I can tell you the lights are still on late at night, even now, because of those philosophies. So what does that mean for you? Why did I choose that? I chose it because I hope it lays a seed in your brain that, oh, okay, we got this year to deal with. We got 2013 that we have to survive. But start thinking down the road, how are you going to keep this incredible spirit alive when you do have, what do they probably have, 3,000 or 4,000 employees now at Facebook, maybe probably closer to 4,000. Okay? All right, so there they are. They're the big 7 that I thought, it might be interesting for you to contemplate while your lives were being decided in the back. I am a professor, so I really want to encourage you to keep learning. So I'm going to mention a few of these books. Of course, they're all online in ebook form. There's Crossing the Chasm, Getting to Plan B, and my textbook if you want to reference. But there's 3 books that were published this year that I really, really like. And it's one from a colleague who's been here to Chile many times, is the reason for our relationship with Católica, and that is Tina Seelig. She has a great book out on creativity called Ingenious. There's Getting to Plan B I mentioned, and then, there's Steve Blank's book that I mentioned earlier, and then there's another one that I did not have time to talk about and show you a video of from a professor at Harvard called The Founder's Dilemmas. The Founder's Dilemmas. And it is, they are, those 3 in particular, none of these actually overlap. And I encourage you to have a look at them. I also, if you liked any of the videos, you saw the whole broadcast as well as the various snippets are tagged and keyword and they're translated into Spanish. I should have played those. I encourage you to take a look at them. And then, of course, there's some great blogs in entrepreneurship. So with that, Hit me, yeah, hit me. There we go. Ta-da!
Really?